Joe, I sometimes think that military intelligence is a contradiction in terms.
You're not very grateful, are you?
Well, for having my time wasted.
He did save our lives, you know. Well, didn't he?
You're quite right, Joe. I'll apologize. If I have the time.
What are those things?
Well, that is the discarded circuit from my TARDIS. And this is an identical circuit that I borrowed from the Master's horsebox.
What does it do?
You wait there and I'll show you. Bye-bye, Joe.
Doctor, where are you going?
Just a proving flight.
Doctor, what's happening?
Stupid.
Doctor, stop being childish.
What's wrong with being childish? I like being childish.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who on an episode that's definitely not late, it's very much on time. This is the time we always upload episodes. This week we are continuing our look into Terror of the Autons with part 3. I am Matthew, I forgot to introduce myself, and as always I am joined with, I'm off to a great start.
Hello, I am Scott, and this is a podcast we do sometimes.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and we do it so well every time. This week we are looking at parts 3 and 4 of Terror of the Autons and concluding our time with the third Doctor. It's an exciting episode. He lied through his teeth. Scott, you've got some Writer's Corner stuff to talk about before we dive into this episode.
The writer of this episode is Robert Holmes, and he was born in 1925, and at the age of 18 in 1944, he went to join some war or something. I'm not too sure what war was going on in 1944. Any ideas?
What war was going on in 1944?
Yeah.
The war. I don't know. The war on Christmas. That's a big one. I think that one's still going on.
The biggest war.
The biggest, yeah. They just can't catch Santa Claus.
So Robert Holmes became the youngest commissioned officer in the entire British Army during World War II, apparently, mainly because he lied about his age. It was discovered at his commissioning, but no one cared, except for one general who congratulated him and said he also lied about his age. So yeah, people lying about their age, that's kind of disturbing.
It's a classic move in World War I and II, though. You know, there's so many stories about people lying about their ages back then. It's it's very sad.
There's a great episode of NCIS starring Christopher Lloyd, where he plays an old soldier who lied about his age to get in the war, but because he lied about his age, his record isn't officially on record, so he couldn't get like a medal or a certificate or something, so he has to prove he was in that war. It's a really great episode, really great performance from Christopher Lloyd.
That's cool. I've not really seen much of NCIS since I was
Neither have
I. My brother is actually a huge fan of the show, and he has seen like every single season of it multiple times.
Christ.
And he's even got because believe it or not, right? NCIS is a spin-off show of another show called Jag, and he's currently watching through Jag, which he has all on DVD. It's insane. He's just a big fan of it. Which is, I guess, fair enough. It's an extremely popular show still, believe it or not. It is like one of the most popular shows in American network television. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've only seen the episode with Christopher Lloyd because it's Christopher Lloyd. He gives such a phenomenal performance in that episode. I think it's like the best performance I've seen him do. He is so good in that episode. If you want to watch one episode, just watch that one. It's so good. So after the Holmes, Robert Holmes decided to join the police, which is funny considering the complaints that the story could only make children distrust the police. If you remember the cliffhanger to part 2, it's when the policeman turns his head and reveals himself to be an Auton. So Robert Holmes making children mistrust the police. So while given evidence in court, he would noticed the excitement and frantic work of journalists reporting on the case and decided he'd like to do similar work, so he resigned and wound up writing for both local and national newspapers. So he became a writer just because he noticed people being excited about writing about crimes.
It didn't need a journalist degree or anything. God, times were so different back then.
Yeah, you could just jump from one career to the next so easily. You could just apparently
be like, that looks fun. Can I get a job there? Sure.
And then in 1957, he wound up working in television dramas like The Saint, Ghost Squad, and Public Eyes, which were all shows about law enforcement, apparently. But I hear the word Ghost Squad and I think it better have fucking ghosts in it.
Yeah, it won't. It will not, though. I know it won't.
In 1965, he landed his first sci-fi script with Undermined, which is a show about body snatching. I've never heard of it.
No, I've never heard of it either, but I do like body snatching as a theme in science fiction. It's always fun.
The same year, he submitted a spec script to the BBC called The Space Trap. The BBC loved it, but they thought it would make more sense to rework the script as a Doctor Who story instead. Which does make a lot of sense. Why invest in other sci-fi shows when you have this sci-fi show running basically 52 weeks a year? And everybody's watching it. Why not just submit scripts for that instead?
Yeah. Keep that Doctor Who farm churning.
Just thinking about it, 52 episodes a year almost. Still insane to me.
It is brutal. It's a brutal workload. Completely brutal.
The script wound up being forgotten about for a few years as Holmes wound up working for other shows, but he wound up submitting the script to Doctor Who offices again in 1968, and the story became The Crotons, a story that is considered like one of the worst Troughton stories. It's one of the... But Terrence Dicks considered it to be a strong script, so he commissioned him to do another script called The Space Pirates. Another one that's not very good, apparently. So,
yikes! Yikes! That's a good batting average right there.
I think we had the chance to do the Space Pirates like last month, I think it was, and I decided against it because obviously it's not a good episode. After this, Robert Holmes would then do Spearhead from Space, which is obviously Pertwee's first story and the first ever Auton episode. And Robert Holmes was considered the man who helped define the Pertwee era by creating villains that was familiar from the high streets. Basically, everybody's familiar with plastic mannequins. And it makes sense because Russell T Davies wanted to make Doctor Who closer to home when he revived the show in 2005. And his first episode contains Autons as well, which terrified me as a kid, to be honest with you.
Yeah, same. I remember even like being a kid and looking at like actual mannequins and just still being uneasy, like, fuck, like what if it starts moving?
Oh God, so many times. Oh, just so scary.
Yeah.
He would then have
pizza.
Yeah, that scene where the bin burps terrified me.
Terrifying. Nightmares for years.
He would then, of course, write Terror of the Autons, which got a lot of publicity when it got brought up in the House of Lords by Baroness Bacon, who was concerned about the amount of children who had nightmares after the episodes. So yeah, a lot of controversy from this one episode, which nowadays...
I love when...
Yeah, nowadays this episode is kind of tame in comparison, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, this episode is campy and dumb, but like I really love when Doctor Who gets brought up in Parliament. It always makes me laugh because it's such a silly show for people in like leading the country to be like, I don't like this show, I tell you. We played a clip way back at the very early days of our podcast when it happened of the man. I don't remember his name, some Tory being like, Doctor Who is the reason there's lots of crime.
Yeah, because a man needs a good role model, because a woman can't be role models.
The doctor's a woman. The doctor's a woman, and it's making us do crime. So,
yeah, I was just about to mention the same thing. It's insane. Just, yeah. Everything going on with the BBC and the Tories at the moment. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's great. It's so cool. It's so great.
I mean, after all this controversy, Robert Holmes would then go on to write a very silly story called Carnival of Monsters. So imagine this story is silly by today's standards. The next story is even sillier. His number one choice for the successor was Robert Holmes after, Terrance Dicks wound up leaving the show. Sorry. Cut this bit out, please. Sorry.
I'm gonna keep it in. Fuck you.
No. After Carnival of Monsters, he then wrote The Time Warrior, which introduced the Sontarans, which is still one of the most popular villains of Doctor Who to this day. Of course, he wrote a lot of lore about how the Sontarans have sex through the back of the hole in their necks. We'll discuss that in a few months. Actually, it's gonna be great.
That's the conversation I'm looking forward to having.
When Terrance Dicks was leaving at the end of Pertwee's era, his number one choice for successor was Robert Holmes. Robert shadowed Terrance for 3 stories for season 11 before jumping on his full-time script editor to start season 12 until midway through season 15. So he was basically there for the first half of Tom Baker's run as a Doctor, which is a lot of years, 3.5 years.
That is a lot of years, yeah.
And we will actually be discussing one of his episodes when he was script runner next month when we do Genesis of the Daleks. You'll begin to see a theme here. Sadly, I made the misfortune of making every episode for the next 4 months be Robert Holmes scripts. So basically, the 5th Doctor episode we're covering will be Robert Holmes. The 6th Doctor episode we're covering will be Robert Holmes. And I did not intend this. But yeah, this era of the show was very violent, the Tom Baker years, which is... He wanted to make it as violent as possible, basically. And it got brought up in the House of Commons much more than it would have in the John Pertwee era. As a script editor, brilliant. Holmes had a heavy hand in every script and even wrote 3 of his own stories during this time and performed a complete ground-up rewrites on 2 other stories, which is 5 stories in his run as script editor. How? He left after the BBC received too many complaints about the show's dark tone, and the BBC needed it to become lighter again, which is understandable. You don't want kids to keep having nightmares, and you kind of want to bow the pressures of the House of Commons, basically, sometimes.
Nah, you don't screw them all.
Anthony Reid, his successor, would quickly call for him to write a further 3 stories for seasons 15 and 16. And soon after this, Robert Holmes decided he really needed a break from the show. Writing 6 scripts in 5 seasons is insane.
That's a lot. It's a lot of work for sure.
He was heavily involved with the show for a decade at this point, writing multiple stories a year. I don't blame him for wanting a 5-year break. His final episode of Doctor Who before the break aired over the Christmas period of 1978. You were going to say something, sorry.
I was just going to say it was well earned, break-wise,
Yeah, definitely. He would then go to write it on a mini-series called Nightmare Man, episodes of Blake 7, which we might cover someday, as well as a pilot episode...
It keeps coming up.
I know. As well as the pilot episode of Time Slip, which actually never made it to series. He was then pulled back into the Doctor Who universe after a 5-year break to write what would become the 5 Doctors in 1983. However, he had a lot of difficulty trying to juggle all the characters and handed it over to Terrance Dicks, which is, again, understandable. There's so much going on in an anniversary script. I can't imagine trying to write for that.
No, that's like a nightmare script, really, isn't it? There's so much pressure.
You know, you got to include the Master, you got to include Cybermen, the Daleks, like 50 companions, all 5 doctors, and it's insane.
Which, if you think about it, that's just like an average Chibnall episode.
Oh yeah, everyone just standing around doing nothing. Like 200 characters.
We've got so many characters, and all of them have nothing to do.
And speaking of anniversary episodes, we're going to be covering the 30th anniversary special Dimensions in Time next week, or in a few days actually. So. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah. It will be. I think it's probably the greatest episode ever made.
Yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 masterpiece.
Yeah, definitely. It's so good. It's so good.
He would then write The Caves of San Tristani in 1984, which we're covering in May. One of the best episodes ever, in most people's opinions. He then wrote The Two Doctors the next year, which we're covering in June. He was then attached. Yeah,
really going through this guy's career. It's amazing.
He was then attached to write the opening story of Trial of a Time Lord, as well as the closing story. However, Robert sadly died of a short illness before he could write for the second episode of the two-parter. He died.
How old was he?
Yeah, he died at the age of 60, which is still way too young.
Okay, it's still way too young, but at least he got through his 50s.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, true.
The curse was a little bit slow to get to him, but he got to see his 50s, which does not happen for a lot of Doctor Who related people behind the scenes.
Later, Russell T Davies would give him high praise by saying The Ark in Space was one of his favourite episodes, and he considered Holmes to be compatible with the greatest screenwriters, which is, I imagine if Robert Holmes was alive by 2005, Russell would have contacted him to write for his show, because he declined like Bob Baker. I imagine he would have had Robert Holmes on board to write a few stories.
That would have been cool. That would have been pretty cool.
Holmes wrote the most single Doctor Who episodes of all time, in the classic era at least, with 64 episodes over 18 stories. He wrote
so much.
He wrote nearly 10% of Classic Who, 64 episodes out of 694. Insane.
That is insane. Absolutely insane.
But yeah, that's Robert Holmes. Shall we dive into the episode itself?
Yes, let us continue our watch as we begin Terror of the Autons, Part 3.
Nothing to report so far. We'll continue to search. It's worthless. Absolutely worthless.
Now, Doctor.
Days of exhaustive investigation by the Brigadier's band of bloodhounds, and what have they discovered? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, the incompetent imbeciles.
We're doing everything possible, Doctor.
No news from any of those plastic factories?
Well, there were those reports of a promotional tour.
My dear girl, the Master is scarcely likely to advertise what he's doing.
I suppose not.
I will not give up. He's lying low somewhere, and we've got to find him.
Maybe he's given up.
The Master? Never. He's too conceited.
The episode begins immediately where we left off last week, which, if you do not remember, it was the policeman officer getting his face torn off and revealing that he is indeed an Auton. The Doctor and Joe run out of the car as the Autons begin shooting at them, and we open up to like a pretty okay action sequence, I guess. There's lots of explosions and gunfire. It's an exciting way to start an extremely boring episode. I'd really the most notable thing here that happens here is two ridiculously dangerous looking stunts happen in this sequence, with people throwing themselves headfirst down giant hills in the quarry, which is just full of giant rocks. And the second one specifically as well, when the dude is doing full-on flips in the air going down that hill. My God.
Yeah, the first stunt is basically bent and falling down, but he kind of falls upside down. His head lands almost full force on the ground. It's like if he moved 1 centimeter, his neck would be snapped. His neck would be broken.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And with a second stunt with the Auton is amazing. Terry Walsh played the Auton.
It's impressive that in the same shot you see them get back up and start walking again. Like, Dave must have been in so much pain. Like,
so yeah, the original idea was just for the Auton to be hit by a car, but Terry Walsh really wanted to do a stunt falling down the 60-foot slope to show the Autons were invincible. Barry Letts said he had no money to pay him extra for that, but Terry Walsh basically said he'd do it for free. A death-defying stunt. The idea was for him to roll... Yeah, the idea was for him to roll down the hill a few feet, but he bounced back too far and tumbled down the entire slope. He was unharmed aside from a few bruises, and Barry Letts had no need to ask for a retake because the fall was spectacular and he got it all on camera. When Richard Franklin, the driver of the car, who also plays Benton, was asked if he had any guilt about it, he joked, "No, I don't feel any guilt at all. I wish he had broken his neck."
So it's impressive that the guy, one, was basically his idea, and two, was unhurt by it completely, because it is a terrifying stunt to watch happen. It's
amazing. It's like a movie quality stunt in Doctor Who, honestly. It's amazing. And just... also Katie Manning twisted her ankle on the very first day of film, and you can see her kind of get hurt for a moment on camera. The crew joked that they would find another replacement for her, and she broke down in tears, but John Pertwee wound up comforting her. So, yeah, poor old Katie Manning, her first date. This is like her second ever job as well. And she twisted her ankle.
That sucks. Yeah, that sucks. But the Doctor and everybody, the Brigadier and stuff arrive here. They all escape through a car as the Autons shoot at them. And then we cut to the Master inside his office doing extremely interesting things.
He's talking to Davros, basically. Just reiterating that the Doctor and the companions got away, basically.
Yes, and that is a recurring theme of this episode, recapping what happened before and not really progressing or doing anything forwards as we move to the next scene in the
only thing worth noting,
Doctor's workshop.
Yeah, the only thing worth noting about the Master scene is he is standing in front of a window with a painted backdrop, which looks so much better than the green screen they have been using this entire story. Like, it looks like he's actually
in a building. You say it looks better. You say it looks better. I say it looks more boring. It's not as fun. But we then cut to the Doctor in his little workshop bit at the unit base as he's desperately trying to leave the scene because he knows how boring and stupid it is, as the Brigadier and Joe and Benton are all chatting away what's the enemy intention? What are we going to do? What's our plan here? And the Doctor's like, I don't care about anything that you're saying. You're not saying anything useful. Please shut up and go away. He's really speaking on behalf of the audience. During this scene, he's just constantly trying to leave, and he's like, why are you wasting my time? Which is a sentiment that I really relate to for this episode.
Yeah, the entire time.
But he's so rude. He's such a rude man. Like.
Yeah, he is incredibly rude in this episode. The entire scene, he's basically like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, the whole plan is to invade the Earth. Yeah, why are you saying this, Brigadier? You know the plan. It's simple. It's easy to understand. Why are you reiterating it, Brigadier? Is what the Doctor is saying to the Brigadier in this scene.
Yep, he's just. Why are you recapping the episode? Why aren't we progressing the episode? What's going on? He's suddenly become self-aware of the script. But Brigadier and that leave in frustration, and then we actually get quite a fun little scene with the Doctor and Joe, where the Doctor is tinkering with this little device thing that he quote-unquote borrowed from the Master's TARDIS. That he thinks is going to allow, it's like the thing that makes the TARDIS transport or whatever. It's a science jib-jab. It doesn't really matter what it does. It makes the TARDIS go burr. And he's like, I'm going to go stick it in my TARDIS and I'll show you what's happening, Joe. Bye. Haha, see ya. He goes in, sticks it in. We hear some whirring and some cranking. And then the Doctor comes out as there's a huge plume of smoke, and he frustratedly kicks the door. And he's got a great line where he's like, what's wrong with being childish? I like being childish, when Joe tells him to grow up a bit.
Fantastic line.
And we find out that
is a fantastic line. Also, Joe is like, why don't you apologize to the Brigadier? You were just being an asshole there. And the Doctor's like, I'll apologize later if I have a time.
Yeah. Such a rude man. And we find out that the thing doesn't work because the Master's TARDIS is like a Mark II thing, and his one's a Mark I thing. Again, science jibber jabber, doesn't matter. But the important information we get here is that the Master is stuck on Earth as well.
Yeah.
Because, which is setting up... Sorry, I had to burp. Which is setting up, the rest of the season where the Master is the villain in every goddamn episode.
Mm-hmm. I don't think he escapes Earth till like season 10.
Oh my god, he's stuck on Earth for a long time.
Yes.
We then cut to the Master chatting about how they're printing off cool plastic flowers, and the plastic flowers look really cool. And then we cut to a bunch of people in giant heads handing out plastic flowers and walking towards their big plastic flower bus. And then it turns out that those people were Autons, and the whole time I'm wondering, why the fuck am I watching this?
The whole scene of them giving away the deadly flowers reminds me a lot of Little Shop of Horrors, the director's cut, where the ending is little Audrey 2s are being sold everywhere across the planet, and it's going to destroy the planet someday.
Yes.
Such a great movie.
Yeah. I haven't seen Little Shop of Horrors since I was a kid, so I've got like the most fever dream memory of that movie.
I think you need to watch the director's cut someday soon. It's so fucking good. There was going to be a scene here where a policeman would board the coach, be suspicious about the occupants, and then get murdered by the Autons, but they ran out of time to record the scene because they were too busy fucking around trying to get the little man in the little box, apparently, I guess. But the actor who was hired to play the character was still credited. Bill McGurk also played a guard in the Enemy of the World. That's who was hired to play the policeman.
What? That's a great last name. That's a really good last name. McGurk. I like it. I like it a lot. We then cut to the Doctor and Joe, and this is a really funny scene because the Doctor and Joe are talking, and the Doctor's like, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the Master's planning. And Joe goes, well, maybe it's got something to do with those plastic flowers that keep getting handed out. And the Doctor's like, shut up. No, it doesn't. Shut up. And he just completely dismisses her.
Like Joe has a puzzle piece that could advance the episode, but instead we're just in filler land because the Doctor doesn't want to listen to a woman.
Yeah, classic Third Doctor move. But yeah, this is what I really like about the scene is not only the Doctor dismissing the actual plot point, is it's him standing around going like, God, I don't know, there's no plot right now. Nothing is, if only I could figure out what would move the plot forward. There's no plot. Nothing's happening, which is really good. And then he gets introduced to a man called Mr. Brown-Nose or something.
His name is Brown Rose, but obviously it's a pun on Brown Nose.
Brown Nose.
It's an incredibly adult pun for classic Doctor Who, I would say.
Yeah, it's very funny because he's like a lower bureaucratic person in some department in the government or something like that, and the Doctor is just horrendous to him. He's so mean. He just keeps calling him like tubby and fat and stupid.
I think he's referring to like his boss. Basically, he's like, the last time I met your boss, Tubby Rowlands, was when I was at the club, and I said, look here, Tubby.
Yeah, I was like, look here, Tubby, your department's getting filled with all the wrong people. Like, so rude. Like,
plot is happening outside, and we need to figure out what is going on. We need to basically.
He's basically like, they're killing people. They're not really killing anybody for any particular reason, and it's something to do with the plastics. And yes, the plot, which is great. It's really good. And then they're like, maybe we need to
go speak to the wife of a man who was killed in episode 2. Yeah. And
they're like, maybe we need to go talk to the wife of this guy. And the Doctor's like, okay, and teleports there straight away. Like, he just boop, teleport. There's no cut, there's no transition. We stay in a close up of the Doctor, and he starts talking, and suddenly we're in this room with the lady. It's so jarring. It like slaps you in the face. How did we get here? Like, The episode continues with the extremely boring lady as she, in excruciating amounts of detail, goes over everything that happened with her husband in episode 2, from him working in the factory to coming home to getting the doll to the doll killing him and him being dead and her kitchen not being real, all the things that covered in the last episode. But this time she's telling you it, so it's less exciting than it was the first time you saw it. And this goes on for a long time.
Which wasn't exciting at all.
Nope. It was not exciting at all, and it goes on an extremely long time. We then cut to a man fixing the doctor's telephone as Benton comes in, and he's like, "Hey, who are you? Give me your ID card here. Tell me who you are. Give me your pass paper." And he's like, "Oh, this is like the 6th time I've been checked," and gives him a piece of paper. This man is secretly the Master in disguise, which is it's a fun little disguise. You know, it's the first time the Master. Is it the first time the Master's wore someone else's face? I think it is. I don't think he did it in episode 2.
I can't remember.
I don't.
So long ago.
He
but
might
also,
have.
when he gives Yates the bit of paper, I imagine it's psychic paper that the Doctor also has in the future. Because otherwise, I don't know. It feels like psychic paper. That's my headcanon, at least.
Yeah, because I
make
mean, like,
the
how
scene
else?
a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, how else did he get the pass? Because the Doctor definitely did not ask for his phone cord to get longer. Or if he did, how did the Master know that he would and knew which one to intercept? Like, psychic paper simplifies it, so you don't have to ask these terrifying questions that unravel the plot. The really serious, well thought out
I love how
plot.
elaborate this plan is, though, and also just Benson's like, yeah, I guess that does make sense. He does like to pace back and forth a lot.
Yeah, which is fair. Like I believed the reasoning. I didn't find the reasoning to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
But then we cut back to the Doctor and the old lady, and she's showing the Doctor and Joe the terrifying, very creepy, not at all hilarious looking doll. And she's like, "We thought it was super ugly, but I guess it's a novelty for adults. Anyway, there, you can have it." And the Doctor's like, "Awesome, I'm gonna kiss it."
Yeah, they only went to this scene because the Doctor needed to be out to the office for the Master to screw in the cliffhanger device.
Yeah, and it also allows them to get given the plastic doll and bring it back. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
But it takes them so long to get to it. You know, like, we have to go over everything that happened in episode 2 before they get given the doll. And then when they get given the doll and they teleport back to the Doctor's like lab bit, he starts performing surgery on the doll, which is very funny because, you know, he's like, you know, scalpel, stirrups, you know, like he's treating it like a proper surgery, just to find out that it's made of entirely solid plastic, which you would, well, surely you'd be able to tell by just touching the outside that, oh, this thing is solid plastic. Like, if I was holding a solid plastic toy and a toy that has got like a little mechanical device in it, you can tell the difference. Like,
yeah,
just
like even if he couldn't tell it was solid plastic from just touch alone, he'd be like, he could have used a sonic screwdriver or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't use his sonic screwdriver once in this episode, which is so funny to watch from a modern Who standpoint, because there's so many times where he could use the screwdriver, including the safe later on when he spends like 2 minutes opening a safe. Great stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's riveting. It is riveting. But then the Doctor, after they find out that it's made of plastic, the Doctor kind of gets bored with his toy, and he starts like walking around taking notes. And he asks for some some science device. Yeah.
Yeah, he asks for a scanning molecular structure analyzer. And he's like, what do you mean we don't have any in stock? And it's like, yeah, of course we don't have any in stock. It's not real. Like, his disbelief that we don't have something that's not real in stock is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's shocking, honestly. But the Doctor's very upset about this, and he's like, "Okay, bro, we're just gonna go investigate the factory now." And he takes the Brigadier with him for some reason, and they both leave. He tells Joe nobody's to touch the doll and everything's to be pretty cool. And when they leave, Yates is like, "Hey, let's have hot chocolate and make out, maybe. I don't know, something that'd be kind of cool."
Yeah, he's making hot chocolate from the Bunsen burner in the Doctor's lab, which reminds me of when I was a kid at science class. I was scared of these Bunsen burners, man. Did you ever do anything with Bunsen burners at school?
Yeah, I did loads of stuff with. I did chemistry and physics at school. I was with Bunsen burners all the time.
Okay. Okay, Walter White. It was only because our school was quite old, and the Bunsen burners were also quite old. And whenever we let gas into the room, I was always scared the room would explode. Because a lot of the times, Bunsen burners, the little tube for a Bunsen burner, you put it into the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times they would be split, and it was always 50-50 whether or not it would blow up the entire room.
I think the odds are a little bit less than 50-50. Bunsen burners are really safe. But,
but I was so scared.
Yeah, understandably. See, I was quite lucky that the year I started secondary school was the same year they finished a £1 million refurbishment of our science facility at our school. So everything was super high tech. It was all like white and really modern looking. It's cool as fuck.
Yeah, the school I went to was demolished like 2 years after I left, so it was fucking old, man. It was 100 years old, and there was nothing done to it in like years. So great times.
No, I think my school was built in like the 1980s or something. And then it like just slowly gets like they keep refurbishing it. So they redid the science floor. I think recently they redid like the English department. It's like a 3-floored school. It's a relatively small school, because I live in the middle of nowhere. It's like I think we had like 800 students.
I was about to ask you which school you went to because I think I know which school you went to, but then I forgot. Oh yeah, we're fucking recording a podcast. So I'm not going to dox you. I almost did it there.
That's fine. I'll tell you once we stop recording. But we had like 800 students. I think it was a very small school. But like after like when I was at school, they only cause they did the science department before I arrived anyway. And then the 4 years I was at school, because I left school when I was 16. They didn't refurbish anything except every summer they would be like, we're replacing the windows. With windows that looked exactly the same, and nobody got why they're like, why do you keep replacing the windows? And like, there's so many other things you could be spending money on. Like, I don't get it. But it's unrelated.
If it's the school I'm thinking of, I saw it once. It's a nice building.
It's not a nice building. You might be thinking of a different school.
The school I'm thinking of is nicer in the building I went to, so
yeah.
Swings and roundabouts.
But as Yates is making the hot chocolate, he's like, oh, I have to go and get the hot chocolate. I don't know why he would start making it without going to get it first. Like, why? What? Why did he do that? Why did he be like, let's make hot chocolate, immediately start boiling water on a Bunsen burner, and then go, wait, I need to get mugs and hot chocolate? He did no prep.
Because he needs to leave a room for the plot to happen.
I know, but
little plot there is.
Yeah. And what happens is the terrifying, super realistic looking doll comes to life. And very, very hilariously, it like goes to attack Joe. Like, it's the funniest shot I've ever seen in my goddamn life. Where it's like the close up of the doll and someone's just shaking it to make it look like it's running towards the camera. Fucking amazing. But we cut to the doctor and the brigadier going into the plastic factory where they're shocked to discover that the door is just open. And they go inside as we cut back to Yates shooting the doll dead, which is interesting because if the doll is an Auton, we established at the start of this episode that Autons can't be stopped by bullets. And
I guess this is because it's a different type of Auton. It's a small Auton, so the force of a bullet could knock it out.
But then, why was the master's plan to like mass manufacture these dolls if they can be stopped by bullets and the mannequins can't?
I mean, not everyone has a gun in their house.
Yeah, but like if the doll started attacking everybody, I feel like the army would get involved.
Nah. But going back to the office, they just search around the office in silence for like 5 minutes. It's so good.
Terrible.
It's the best part of the episode. It reminds me of when they go to the box factory in The Simpsons and they just walk around like a desk and it's just like 20 seconds of silence as Principal Skinner is like, very nice.
It is a lot to take as the Doctor is trying to crack it open a safe that is inside this office, and when he does crack it open, there's an Auton inside for some reason that fires a gun, so the Doctor closes the safe again, and then the Doctor and the Brigadier teleport back to the lab. So, I don't know why they went to the lab. What information did they get?
They only found out that basically they hired a coach for 15 passengers, but that's about it, really. And they found a flower, and the Doctor immediately hands it to the Brigadier because he's his lover.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's garbage. But then we cut back to the lab very suddenly as the Doctor's like, I can't believe you killed the doll. Like, what do you mean it came to life? What was going on? And Yates is like, oh, well, I went to go make some hot chocolate. The Dalek, sure. Yates is like, I went to go.
And speaking of the Daleks, the Autons actually speak in this episode. We didn't cover that. They sound a lot like the Daleks, don't they?
I guess. I think they're different enough that you could distinguish them. I never made the relation watching the episode that they sound like Daleks, but it's just like a robot voice, isn't it? You could say they sound like the Cybermen as well. It's just a boring, like, no emotion robot voice. But the Doctor has some very funny, like, I can't believe you're going to make hot chocolate with my Bunsen burner jabs at Yates, and then he figures out that heat activates the tiny little doll, and he's still confused by the little plastic flower, and then he gets a phone call from the Master, which is very funny, because this is, the start of their feud, really, on-screen feud. When the Master calls him, the Doctor's like, who is this? Who's phoning me right now? Like, surely he would know that his childhood friend, the Master, is on the phone to him. Like,
what I like about this scene is the Doctor has to get rid of everyone because he's like, oh shit, we have 2 minutes left of the episode and we need to activate the cliffhanger.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, also, I like the fact that the first conversation between the Master and the Doctor on screen is over the phone, because that's how they do it in New Who. The first time the Doctor speaks to the Master is when John Sims calls David Tennant on his mobile and they have this conversation.
It goes basically the same way as it does in this episode, doesn't it? When David Tennant phones up John Sim and he's like, hey, Master, who's this? Who am I talking to right now? And then the Master's like, haha, you get wrapped up in telephone wire. And David Tennant's like, oh, no. And then the episode ends. It's weird. They just copied that.
David Tennant is like... David Tennant is like, oh, thank God for mobile phones.
Yeah. Because, yes, the huge long cable that the Master was installing on the Doctor's phone was, in fact, like a snake, and is wraps itself around in the most disgustingly violent thing you've ever seen in Doctor Who. It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to witness the Doctor get completely strangled to death by this phone cable. Not at all hilarious looking in the least.
John Pertwee pulls off some really silly faces as he's being strangled by the wire.
I think he knows how dumb it is. It's so...
I do love a cliffhanger for it. It's probably the strongest cliffhanger out of the 4 episodes.
It's definitely the strongest cliffhanger, but that's because, like, the other cliffhangers are barely cliffhangers, Like, this one at least has the Doctor in some semblance of peril, even if it is hilarious, But that is how the episode ends. An episode where, to summarize the plot, they went, what happened last week? Okay, bye. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
No, to summarize the plot, what happened last week? We're going to stand around the lab for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to go to an old lady who tells us more about what happened last week, and then we're going to go back to the lab for some exciting stuff to happen, and then we're going to go to the box factory for nothing to happen.
Yeah.
And then the cliffhanger happens.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
20 minutes of your life wasted. Absolutely superb. But with episode 3 concluded, let us move on to part 4 and finish our time with Terror of the Autons.
Good afternoon, Doctor. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important.
No, indeed not. You've come here to kill me, of course.
But not without considerable regret.
How very comforting.
You see, Doctor, you're my intellectual equal. Almost. I have so few worthy opponents. When they've gone, I always miss them.
How did you get in here?
Oh, don't be trivial, Doctor. I see you've been working on the Nestine Autojet. My own small contribution to their invasion plan.
Vicious, complicated, and inefficient. Typical of your way of thinking.
Now, come, Doctor. Death is always more frightening when it strikes invisibly.
Tell me, how do you intend to activate these flowers?
Oh, by radio impulse, which the Nestines will send. I shall open a channel for them. We've distributed 450,000 of these daffodils. So when 450,000 people fall dead, the country will be disrupted.
And in the confusion, the Nestines will land their invasion force.
Exactly. It's a shame that you can't be here to enjoy the chaos and destruction with me. Goodbye, Doctor.
Episode 4 begins immediately where we left off episode 3 with the Doctor being strangled to death by his telephone cord. And it gets foiled because the Master didn't think the Doctor would be able to yell for help. I feel like it wasn't a well thought out attack because he just yells for the Brigadier to come and help him. The Brigadier pulls out the phone cable and everything is A-okay. Also, why does pulling out the cable kill the thing? I guess it needs the signal, and it's getting the signal through the phone line. I guess that's how it works. But if it's run by the Nestine consciousness, surely the Nestine could just make it come alive?
I don't know.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
The Brigadier does get a good line for when he says, "I'm afraid I cut your connection."
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. We then cut to a man on a motorcycle chasing after a bus. Thrilling stuff, but I think he's a member of UNIT spying on behalf of them or something like that.
No.
No?
He's the Master in disguise as the guy who put in the telephone. He's still in disguise for some reason. I think so, right? He catches up with the bus later on and removes his mask, and he's like, "I'm the Master."
Is that this episode? In my head, that happened last episode. Because the Master was just on the phone with the dog. The Master was just on the phone not in the disguise. Why would he put the disguise back on?
Oh wait, I guess you. Okay. Okay. These episodes feel so repetitive, and it's like, did that happen already, or is it going to happen again?
Yeah, I think that happened. I think that happened last episode.
I don't pay attention, apparently.
But we then go to the Doctor, and he's trying to light the thing on fire, the flower on fire with the Bunsen burners, trying to use heat to activate it. And this is where Yates is like, they've been finding these flowers all around the dead bodies, and they've been handing them out everywhere. That there's been people going around giving out plastic flowers, and the Doctor's like, "Oh my God, how did we not know about this sooner? Well, this is definitely what's going on." Which, if you remember, just a few short moments ago when we said that Joe was telling the Doctor about these plastic flowers. Yeah, this is so much plot that Joe brought up an episode and a half ago.
Joe told the Doctor about it 9 minutes into episode 3, and now 2 minutes into episode 4. The Doctor's like, it's only because a man told him. A man is always right, whereas a woman is always making stuff up. That's how it works,
That's just basic science. That's biology. We then cut to the Brigadier as he's on the phone with everybody, and he's like, "I want to bomb everything," and we cut away again. It's brief. There's a lot of brief, pointless scenes in this episode. And speaking of brief and pointless
my
scenes,
favorite moment is when they're all in their army gear, and the Doctor's immediate reaction is like, "My God, you look fierce."
yeah, it's a great line.
It's a great reading from John Pertwee.
But he's basically like, the military is stupid and they're just going to blow everything up. And he finds out that they've got an hour and a half to basically try and solve everything before everything goes kaboom. Which it adds a fun ticking clock element to the episode that doesn't really factor into anything. But ticking clocks are always fun.
Yeah, and like 2 scenes later, we're like, oh yeah, 37 minutes till everything goes kabloom. And it's like, wow, an hour just flew by. What the hell's going to be going on?
Yeah, an hour did fly by. But you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun, and everybody's just having a grand old time. But the doctor's running like a science thing on some signal, and he turns it into a face, and he's like, there's a face in this signal. And they're still trying to figure out what triggers it. It turns out it's triggered by radio waves, which causes the flower to come alive and jizz on Joe's face. It's very graphic. It casts like a plastic film over her nose and her mouth, and she starts like suffocating to death. It's a fun little effect, actually, the thing around her face. It doesn't look really like it would be too threatening, but it's a cool idea for sure. And the doctor manages to what did he like sprays like aerosol on it or like water or something, and it gets rid of it. How would
the doctor breathes on it. He uses his breath
he gets a can.
Which doesn't make.
He picks up a spray can. He starts spraying.
Maybe
in her
he gets
face.
a can of like liquid.
Yeah, he starts like spraying it like in her eyes.
It's very strange, bro.
Yeah. And he gets rid of it, and he's like, oh, this must be how they've been killing everybody. People triggered it accidentally with the radio waves, and then they got suffocated to death. Interesting. And then he makes a discovery of like, how do they get rid of it? Why was this not found on any of the bodies? And he breathes on it, and it melts in his hand, and he goes, yes, carbon dioxide must cause it to melt, which is why it was not found on any of the bodies that weren't breathing when they died. Which doesn't make sense. I guess maybe it would make sense, like when you die, like your body like relaxes, so you release like all your gases and liquids.
Yeah, I mean, you
stuff,
shit yourself.
Yeah, as South Park so famously told everybody. Presumably, you like burp at you as well. Like air escapes through both ends. So maybe when they just die and they're like, that like their dying breath is what dissolves the thing. That could be the only explanation. But also, if you've got a thing suffocating your face, I guess you're not really. You could breathe out though. Like if you're going like screaming, it would still. I don't think carbon dioxide works as an explanation. You could just give it like a short half-life so that like the thing just dissolves naturally. Like it stays long enough to suffocate somebody to death and then it dissolves. Like you could just say like mumbo jumbo science. You don't need to complicate it with stuff that just makes it not work.
And later on, the doctor will know a lot about suffocating when a face hugger suffocates him in Aliens. Oh wait, that's a different character altogether. That's John Hurt in Aliens.
Spoilers.
What I like about this scene is it was decided that flowers being controlled by radio waves was better for the plot than flowers being controlled by temperature, because obviously the British temperature is always changing and it doesn't make much sense for every flower to be activated at the same time. So radio waves was a better choice, I think, and it also gives the doctor like a tangible location to go to at the end of the episode.
Yeah, but it makes me confused as to why they would make the doll active by heat. Like, why bother to make two different things that are activated in two separate ways? Why not just be like everything's activated by radio waves?
Was the doll mass-produced? Because I think the master says in episode 1 or 2, but it was only
it
like
wasn't.
It was like
the doll. It was a prototype because he was the guy came in and he was like, look at our doll, we would like to mass produce this doll, please sign off on doing that. And he went, no, it's ugly as fuck. And then the master tried brainwashing him and he went, lol, that doesn't work on me, bye. And like he was like, oh, please just consider the doll, and he threw the doll in the back of the car. This is a plot line that gets completely dropped and gets replaced by the plastic flowers instead. Like
yeah, maybe the master's original plan was, oh yeah, I've got two good ideas, and I'm going to test them both out at the same time, but the dolls are going to take more time, so I might as well just focus on the flower pan. Put the dolls in the back burner for a bit.
Oh, God.
Maybe use it against this dude.
Oh, it's not good. It's not good at all. But then the master just comes downstairs in the lab. He was just upstairs the whole time, hiding out, spying. How did he get in? Don't worry about it.
I mean, Okay, we haven't seen the Master since he left. No, he went.
Yeah, we saw the Master on the phone.
Episode, didn't
we
he?
saw
Yeah.
we saw the Master on the phone to the Doctor, being like, "I'm gonna kill you now, ha ha ha," and then the Doctor never left the lab. Like, the Doctor's not left the lab since then, and the Master has made his way upstairs somehow. Makes no sense.
Yeah, the Master is mysterious.
Makes no sense. But the Master comes downstairs and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you, ha ha ha." That's gonna be very funny. I do quite like this scene simply because Roger Delgado and John Pertwee are great together, and whenever they're just chatting, it's always compelling. And they're
the Master gets such a great line when he says, "You're my intellectual equal. Almost. I have so few worthy opponents. When we're gone, I always miss them," which is a nice little message that the Master doesn't want to kill the Doctor because he would just miss the Doctor. It's a great relationship between the two of them. We're like almost equals as well. It's such a good line to just encapsulate their character chemistry together.
Absolutely it is. And then Jo comes in and makes a right ass of herself. As she comes in, the Doctor's like, "Wait, don't kill us, because if you kill us, you'll be screwed, because you'll destroy this science device I've got for your TARDIS, remember, from the last episode? And you're stuck here on Earth right now as well." And the Master's like, I'm gonna shoot you anyway. Whatever. And then Joe's like, "No, it's okay, Doctor, because we've won, because they're about to blow up that bus. Ha ha ha, take that, Master." Which is just the dumbest thing she could have said in that moment. She couldn't have said anything more stupid. Completely ruins it for everybody.
And also, just saying that to a man who's pointing a gun at you. Well, it's not even a gun. It's more like a... What is this? It's like... It almost looks like a cigar.
It's like a tube.
Almost. Like...
Yeah, it's like it just fires something. Like, it doesn't look like a gun at all.
But yeah, being like that towards a man with a gun pointing at you, he could escape this room and just be completely fine at the end of the day. He could kill you both. You haven't won. Yeah, you might have stopped this plan, but the Master is going to think of like a million other plans. Like,
and he does. Like, the episode continues as the Master makes the Doctor and Jo drive towards the bus so that they will stop the jet attack coming in to blow everything up. And then we get a fun little bit of suspense that I think goes on a little bit too long, where they're like, "Is the jet going to blow us up or not?" And it doesn't, because they managed to get the order to cancel it sent off just in time. We get some fun stock footage of a jet, which must have been exciting when you were watching it live on TV in the 1970s. I mean, how often do you get to see a fighter jet? Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then
the Doctor comes up with a brilliant plan to use the tail lights to signal a Morse code message to the Brigadier and his crew, which is really well written, I would say. It's a smart plan to get out of this situation.
It is a smart plan. With the message Estion.
Yeah, we cut to the Brigadier saying EST, and then we cut to the Doctor and Jo again, and then we cut back to the Brigadier finishing the message of ION, so Estion, and then it turns out the first word is daffodil. EST was the first few letters the Brigadier gave out, and the first word was daffodil. I don't know how that works.
I guess like he just didn't get the message right at the start. Like, what is the full message? Which means they must have been like doing this for ages, because he types out like a full-on 3 sentences. He goes, "Daffodils are lethal, activated soon, destroy immediately." So EST is from destroy. Interestingly, ION's not anywhere to be found.
No, I'm sorry. Where does the EST come from?
EST in the word destroy.
EST in the word destroy.
Yeah.
Where in the word destroy is the word is the letters EST?
Where in the word destroy are the letters EST? In the middle.
Okay, yeah.
What?
Okay, I got it now.
But
okay. I just did a Game Grumps moment by mistake. You know, the moment where Dan Avidan is trying to spell out I or something. And Aaron is like, no, it's spelled EWE or something like that. I just did that in real life, and I'm embarrassed.
But
I thought it was DI.
Right, destroy, not destroy. But what's interesting is ION is not in any of these words. There's none of these words.
No, it's like multiple sentences.
Yeah, no, but all three sentences: daffodils are lethal, activated soon, destroy immediately. ION is not three letters in any of those words.
Give me a second. I need to skip around.
Oh, hang on. There's a fourth sentence. Guard radio research station.
I told you.
ION. Because he types out four sentences. 4 whole sentences in like 3 seconds in Morse code that they managed to pick up from the second last sentence. Truly amazing work.
He could just be like, he could have just messaged out for signal, stop jet, guard station.
Yeah, or
that's kind of all he needs.
Just SOS, just help. Like, you know. And then the doctor's like, Joe, it's such a shame you weren't taught escapology at school. And then she's like, well, doctor, actually I was. And she escapes out of her bindings somehow. I guess she's just wiry. Like, how does she? Okay, she's out of it. And the whole time the master's been chatting with an Auton with his back turned. What conversation do you think he was having with that Auton? There's like a faceless Auton just standing there.
I don't know.
He was chatting away with it about like.
But Joe removes her hand from behind her back for like a full 5 seconds. I mean, the master turns around almost immediately. So Joe almost fucked herself again.
Classic move. And then
and then one of the Autons, starts moving the doctor, and there's like 2 seconds where the doctor's nose is right on Katie Manning's chest.
Yeah. It's only brief. Yeah. It's not. It feels more accidental, like an accidental like brushing up against, rather than in Hand of Fear with Tom Baker, where he was like, "Ooh, grabby," and that was gross. This is like accidental brush up, not Tom Baker being a weird dude, like.
Yeah. John Pertwee is tied up, so he can't really control his body that much in this scene.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, he's just got to kind of get dragged along the floor, you know.
Yeah.
Then there's a little bit of a car chase as they head towards the radio tower. As units start pulling up, and we can pull into the final action scene of the episode. As Davros starts to like break his like mind control. He's been like fighting it throughout these past few episodes, which is something we've not mentioned yet. And then the master just kind of knocks him out. He like karate chops him in the back of the head, which causes the van that they're in to come to a very pleasant stop. You'd think it'd be more violent, but they just park up, you know? With the driver knocked unconscious, they just come to a very slow and safe stop as all the Autons step out in their hilariously stupid-looking outfits. Like the giant head in the yellow suit, hilarious. I feel like they were trying to make it seem intimidating, because like the Autons themselves, when they're the mannequins, like a mannequin by itself is kind of silly looking, and you've turned that silly looking thing into a terrifying monster. I feel like they're trying to do the same thing with these giant heads, make the silly looking heads be terrifying, but it just makes it seem more silly. I feel like it's got the opposite effect than what they were actually planning.
I mean, they're supposed to be pleasant enough to be like the mascots for a circus. So I guess that's the intent here, but yeah, they look too silly to be considered a threat, really. Yeah.
Then we get some fun gunfire as the doctor's like, he's going to turn the radio signal on and contact the Nestines, oh no. And the master goes running up the radio tower, and absolutely murders a man for no reason. There's a guy coming down the radio tower, and there's this extreme close-up of Roger Delgado's face as he's furious, throwing this man off. And then we get a stunt of a dude falling and slamming into the ground. Just a random death for the sake of having a death. You could just have the radio tower be empty. There doesn't need to be somebody manned in it at the moment.
God, we were just talking about The Hand of Fear, another episode written primarily by Robert Holmes. At least episode 1 was, and that episode also had a scene where a guy falls off a step ladder or whatever.
The steps and the nuclear plant. Yeah.
Like, he was brainwashed as well, and he was chasing the doctor with a spanner, like a rubber spanner, if you remember correctly.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm having flashbacks. Gross. Yeah, terrible episode, The Hand of Fear. But then the doctor and the brigadier come running into the facility. The master's like, it's too late, the Nestines have arrived. And then the doctor's like, do you really think they're going to tell the difference between you and I? They're just going to kill everybody here. And then the master's like, oh, man, you're so right. And then he teams up with the doctor to defeat the Nestine. One thing to mention, the Nestine, it's supposed to be, apparently, according to the Blu-ray, a giant squid, which, in the remaster is a CGI giant squid. It looks pretty cool. In this, which is, I assume...
I showed you a picture of that, yeah.
You did,
it looks cool.
In this, which I assume is like from the DVD or something like that, with the original, if not a little bit touched up effects. It feels like the original effects. It's 4 rays of white light.
Yeah.
It looks like nothing. It doesn't look like anything. It doesn't look like anything. It just looks like 4 rays. Like, if you were watching this, like, on TV, would you have any idea that it was supposed to be a squid?
No.
Like, it doesn't even resemble a squid in the slightest.
But yeah, also I didn't mention this last week, but the Blu-ray also fixes the green screen, so it looks so much more convincing. It also looks like the woman in the last episode, in episode 2, actually looks like she is in a kitchen, which is incredible. I love little touches like that they do, and you also get to watch the original version, which is why do you want to watch the original version?
I'm against them fixing the blue screen in this episode, because the blue screen is the only thing that makes these episodes worth watching. Without the hilarious blue screen, this is a very boring series of episodes.
But also in the radio tower, they have a sign that's instructional steps for helping someone do CPR. Which is funny considering, part of the plan is to get the flowers and it stops breathing and you might have to perform CPR on that person. Do you think that's intentional?
Yeah. No. that feels like too much thought went into it for Classic Who. To be, I feel like it's just a pure coincidence, because they were like building out a radio tower. They were like, oh, there has to be a first aid kit up here because we're up so high. It was just they weren't thinking about the episode. They were just thinking like, what does a real radio tower look like? But the Doctor and the Master team up to defeat the Nestine by doing something with the radio waves. They reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, basically, which is very fun to see the Doctor and the Master team up. It's always fun when that happens. It always makes me smile whenever the Master suddenly becomes a good guy very briefly.
Yeah, you brought it up earlier, but a lot of these Roger Delgado episodes ends with the Doctor being like, hey, wait a minute, Master, kill everyone means you also die. And the Master's like, oh shit, yeah, right.
I didn't, oh yeah, oh my god, I'm gonna die. Yeah, I didn't mean that.
I forgot I am everyone.
Yeah, I'm alive. I'm part of the living people. Oh yeah. I keep teaming up with people that want to kill everybody but them. Why would I think they would want to kill me as well? I'm not one of them.
Is the Master secretly stupid? He doesn't think his plan's through quite a lot.
I don't think it's a secret. But the Master runs away when the Brigadier and the Doctor have their backs turned for some reason, and he runs back to the bus. Where he gets shot at, and then he steps out of the bus, and the guy's like, haha, we've got him. And the Doctor's like, don't be so sure, ha ha ha. And then he gets shot dead, but it's revealed that it wasn't the Master, it was actually Davros wearing the Master's face, because everywhere the Master goes, he has to make sure he has full plastic disguises of masks of everybody he's ever seen, including himself, and extra clothes for them to wear in case there needs to be a weird body swapping moment that happens. This is very similar to the events that happen in the Sea Devils episode, and I feel like this is slightly more believable than it was in Sea Devils, because like in this one at least the Master goes into the bus where it's like it's had all these Autons on it. There's a chance where he could swap it out or like pull out a device that rapidly makes this thing. In the Sea Devils one, it was literally like he just went there and now suddenly this is happening. Like suddenly these guys were working all along and the Master's like it just happens out of nowhere, whereas this there's at least a tinge of believability.
Yeah, and also at the end of Sea Devil, he somehow manages to hypnotize a dude in like 10 seconds off screen and convinces him to wear his disguise. The Sea Devils, by the way, it's almost been a year since we discussed the ending of the Sea Devils. So it's funny how time just keeps going forward. It's funny how this was almost exactly a year ago. It's insane to think about. Apparently the line where Richard Franklin as Benton says, "Sir, he's in the coach, we've got him now." Richard Franklin was trying way too hard in the scene, apparently. He was overacting, and Barry Letts is like, "Oh dear, that's a terrible performance. Let's do some ADR on it." Because apparently overacting in Doctor Who will never happen again.
No, it's a very
overacting Doctor Who is unheard of.
What I really like in Classic Who is how everybody took their performances to a really realistic level, which was like something you don't usually see in campy sci-fi, is people taking it super seriously and performing these like little minor bits of acting across their faces. Like you can really study a performance. It's spectacular.
And yeah, obviously, John Pertwee pulls off the Michael Wisher's face the Master's face to reveal it's Michael Wisher's underneath. Apparently, Michael Wisher's acting was so spot on that people actually thought he fainted under the heat.
Nice, that's pretty great.
But yeah, this isn't the last we're going to see of Michael Wisher. We're going to talk about him as Davros next month, and I'm very excited for that episode. Ooh. Genesis of the Daleks.
Yes, I'm excited for that as well. But this episode continues as we suddenly cut back to the Doctor's lab. There's a lot of sudden cuts in this story. And the Doctor's like, "Oh, we'll see the Master again because I've got his TARDIS thing. So we're going to be seeing him every week, basically. So look forward to that. I sure am looking forward to that." And then the credits roll. It just cut. Boop, done. Episode's done.
Yeah.
It just ends. It's just, this is over now. We're done. We're finished. It's over. There's not really a conclusion. Just everything's okay. Don't worry about it.
I do like that it ends in the Doctor being happy that he's going to face off against the Master every week, because it's his childhood friend. You know, he likes fighting off against the Master and seeing who's smarter against the two of them. He likes the little cat and mouse chase.
Yeah, and he doesn't care how many people die in the way. But that does bring us to the end of Terror of the Autons and to an end of visiting John Pertwee. So, Scott, what do you think about this story? What are your opinions on it?
Yeah, so out of the 3 stories we've covered this year, The Time Meddler, The Enemy of the World, and Terror of the Autons is definitely the worst of the 3 so far. I think it's fair to say.
Yes, easily. Like, by far, the worst of the 3. You know, The Time Meddler was really good and had some hilarious William Hartnell moments. The Enemy of the World was really, really good and had one bad filler episode where nothing really happened, but besides that was a really, really solid, great story. This sucked. This was a bad story. Like, there was like almost no plot. The effects were atrocious. Like, the pacing was terrible. The editing was hilarious, and like it's a fun episode to poke fun at, and like it's a fun romp, it's a fun campy romp that you can laugh and have a good time with. But is it good? No.
This episode has definitely aged one of the worst, you know. I enjoy it. It's very silly, it's very fun, it's entertaining enough. But if you compare those two episodes we've just covered, those two episodes are trying something innovative for Doctor Who, you know. It's an entirely different format for a show in terms of like Time Meddler mixed in science fiction and history elements. That was something innovative. And also Enemy World, it's Patrick Troughton in two roles. That's fun. I think this is classic Doctor Who settling into what the show will be during the John Pertwee era. You know, they're establishing more of a unit characters they set up last year. And now we've got, you know, Mike Yates. We've also got the Master, which is the entire reason we're doing this. The Master is phenomenal in this episode. I love Roger Delgado. We've got the Autons, which is a staple of the Third Doctor's run, and we got the whole unit team together. It's a good episode to show off for what the Third Doctor's era was like. I like the Third Doctor's era. He is my favourite Doctor, but this isn't one of the best episodes of his run. But it's an episode that shows off exactly what you want to see from the Third Doctor's run.
Yeah, for sure. But it is hilarious. It is super funny. Just absolutely hilarious. My God. But what's your like highlight from these episodes, from these two episodes? What's your standout scene?
Okay, my standout, well, not a scene, but the Doctor's entire attitude in episode 3 is like one of the funniest things to me. He's just rude and impatient throughout the entire episode. In terms of like the best scene, I would say the opening of episode 3, all the stunts is fucking amazing. Like, that's some of the best stunts that Doctor Who has ever done. That scene where the Autumn just falls down a 40-foot cliff is amazing, dude.
Terrifying. It's terrifying. It's genuinely terrifying. Yeah, I think I would probably agree with that. Although, like, my favorite moment is whenever there's blue screen. You know, whenever there's blue screen, my light just died, so my footage is now going to be a little bit dark. But whenever there's blue screen, whenever there's blue screen, it made me just laugh with joy because it was hilarious every single time. It was done so poorly. But yeah, I think that's a wrap for Terror of the Autons. You could let us know what you thought about this story by leaving a comment below on our YouTube channel or sending us an email at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com, and we will read it out at the... I'm hitting my microphone. And we will read it out at the end of the month in our monthly news roundup podcast. You could also leave us a comment on the Twitter or on our Facebook. So that's Who Watches Who on Facebook and Watches Doctor on Twitter. We are really ramping up our social media recently, and by we, I mean Scott has been posting a lot. See, it rhymes. And it's great. You should give us a follow on there for all your updates on what we're doing with the pod, for some funny memes, and for just some fun interaction. We're trying to build up our community a bit more and have some fun with you guys. You know, like, you know, we got people downloading and listening to the episode, but we don't know who you are. You know, let's chat. It'll be cool. And you know, yeah, cool. You can also listen to this podcast that was a good sentence, on audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a lot of links in the description. You can follow me on Twitter at Cloth223. And until then, we will see you next week, where we are covering Dimensions in Time. A spectacular special episode of Doctor Who. You're really in for a treat. I don't think it's ever been so compelling.
Be sure to bring along your 3D specs. We're going to present the podcast in 3D.
3D audio. You know, you'll be seeing us. You'll be seeing every dimension of the audio waves.
If you watch the video version of the podcast next week, you'll just see CGI floating heads of both of us.
Yeah, it'll be like we're in the room with you. It'll be such great 3D. But thank you for watching. Sorry this episode was late, but we have had a horrendous snowstorm in the UK, and that I live in the countryside and it completely ruined my internet. But we will
blame
see.
Mathew.
Yeah, don't blame me, blame God. And we will see you on Friday with Dimensions in Time. Bye.
Bye.
God controls the weather.